Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Meggett as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Meggett, and I'm here today with public safety consultant, Barry Furey. Barry, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Chelsea. I have spent my entire adult life in public safety in one form or another. I began back in 1970 as a volunteer firefighter. In 1972, I began as a dispatcher for the county sheriff's department, eventually grew to manage that facility before I left there. I've managed 911 centers in Illinois, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I've also been involved in the fire service as a fire officer in New York, Tennessee, and Alabama. And I come from a family with a long tradition of public safety. My father was a fire commissioner. My grandfather was a New York City police officer who was decorated for life-saving efforts. So it's in my blood, and I have been at it now this is my 55th year in public safety.
That's fantastic. And public safety is something that absolutely governments and quasi-governments and locals and locale, state and regional areas address. We were talking just before we started recording about what role 911 actually plays in the government. And I would love if you would touch on that just a little bit, because I certainly was unfamiliar.
Sure. And how it is integrated into government really depends on the region. You may have a 911 center or 911 service provided by the police department, fire department, or by a separate entity that is chartered specifically for the provision of 911 service. These centers and services can be township, village, county, any type of way you would particularly see your government. They may also be, in many cases, special 911 districts, which are political subdivisions that are chartered and empowered specifically to provide 911 service. And in those particular agencies, all of the various operations become a part of that center, purchasing, hiring operations. So it really depends. You can become a part of a smaller agency, or it may be a large multi-jurisdictional 911 district that serves hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference. I imagine that coordination of that must include some challenges. And I can't imagine the last time that I called 911, imagining that it may come from somewhere else. It may be some other district. I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges that you've seen in working in 911 centers?
The biggest challenge in 911 right now is personnel and the maintenance of retention of staff. There are surveys that say more than 80 some odd % of 911 centers across the nation are understaffed. Many of them that I know are understaffed by double digits. I can give you an example of the impact of that is that a few months ago, I saw a driver that I assumed to be impaired. They were not doing the right things when they should be doing them. And so I called 911. And the phone rang for almost 3 minutes without being picked up. Now, I understand the rationale behind that. And I was just calling somebody who may or may not have been a traffic hazard. But if your baby was at the bottom of your pool and you are hanging on that phone for 3 minutes, you are just going crazy. And I understand the position that people are put in, but it is so difficult to recruit and maintain government employees now, especially for a facility that involves high stress and 24-hour holiday weekend operation. Yeah. Past that point, uh, the challenges are to stay ahead of consumer technology.
Mm,
When I first became involved in public safety, first of all, we didn't have 911. The technology had been out there for about 18 months when I first started, but it didn't migrate to our area for decades afterwards. But the technology that falls into the hands of the general public has such an impact on 911, and yet we are always playing catch up. Cell phones came along, and prior to that, we knew where every phone was. The phone company knew where every phone was because it was the end of a phone company's wire, and they knew where it was. Now you're out driving around. Where are you? That was one of the big changes. And now, as we move forward, things like video texting, video to 911, is now becoming a reality. And I know a lot of people who work in 911 taking the calls are not sure if they're prepared to see a bloody accident scene when they answer the phone. So
right.
there are a lot of things. The technology is great. It brings us more information. Information helps, but information doesn't always make the job easier.
And those are challenges that I think I can very easily tie back to federal government's current situation and circumstances. Is if you're a federal government employee that has recently been laid off or been a part of those Doge terminations, look for other opportunities that you may be able to support your local government and your local regions, like by serving 911. If there's understaffing in 911 centers and facilities, this may be an area where those terminated employees that were working for federal government agencies may be able to look for other employment opportunities and other ways to engage and support their communities. I think a lot of the folks that were working in the federal government found a lot of value and a lot of benefit from being a part of their public service and being a part of their public community and providing that to the nation, the services that they were providing. And I think a lot of them would like to remain in that positions. And if participating or being employed by a 911 center is one of those opportunities to contribute, that's absolutely somewhere they should look.
Oh yeah, and there are vacancies in every state, to my knowledge. And in fact, governmentjobs.com is a generic site that if you go on there and input 911 as your search term, you are going to come up with literally dozens of places that are hiring. Or take a look at your own local community and figure out who provides that service. When are they testing? When are they hiring? And get out there and get your name on the list because, again, full-time positions, potential of layoff almost non-existent. And I'll be honest about that because we're talking about fulfilling a never-ending need. It's
Right.
not seasonal. It's not a
Sure.
seasonal job. You're getting calls on the 4th of July and on Christmas. So, yeah, go out there and check. That would be a win situation. People who are used to government jobs and government benefits, good transition. People who are looking for workers who understand the system, who know the value of a government job, great. So, yeah, I would encourage anybody who's in that position or knows anybody who is to go out and take a look at those jobs right now.
And that's absolutely a valuable add to this conversation. There's so many workers that have been laid off, terminated, or have been given the option to resign and having no other place to necessarily look or no future plans and not having thinking that they were going to be laid off. There's plenty of people out there that need these positions and that they need these jobs. So I think, being able to pair them with that need is incredible. That's an incredible opportunity for folks here. And I want to touch on that technology standpoint as well. The federal government has never, I don't think, ever been one to be the most advanced or the most fastest running or the leading edge of technology, with the exception of probably some defense departments. But I imagine that it's difficult to maintain some consistency across the board or across the nation when it comes to technology. How big are the differences that you've seen in the outfitting of different 911 centers with different technologies? You mentioned earlier that you didn't get 911 for decades after the technology was available. Or is that still the kind of way that technology is disseminating, or?
Yes, though there are different examples now, obviously, than there were
Sure.
back then, because the country is almost totally covered with 911. But there are haves and the have-nots.
Sure.
I was involved in doing some studies a few years back, and at that time, there were two, I believe, 911 facilities in the state of North Carolina that didn't have standby emergency generators.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if the lights go out, don't call 911 here. We'll get back to you when the power's on. And the unfortunate fact is that some communities hang on to their 911 just for bragging rights. There are police departments, or especially sheriff's departments, who, by God, that's our baby and we're going to keep it even if we can't do it. And so I hate to be blunt about it. We have seen some states actually mandate a certain degree of consolidation where, wait a minute, we're not finding enough people to run all these individual centers. Let's put them together. Maybe we'll still be short, but we won't be that short. And the
Right.
technology putting it together, we don't have to duplicate or triplicate or place this and redo this technology over and over again when we could put it all in one or two places instead of 20.
Sure.
You see that out there. And also, what I mentioned on the technology issue is for those technical folks who may now be looking for a job, there are radio and telephone positions in terms of repair and service that are available through not all, but many 911 centers. So if someone has an experience in government technology, whether it's computers or phones or radios or recording devices, it's probably not a bad place to look either, because that high level electronics experience works its way very well into the day-to-day operation and maintenance of the 911 center.
I imagine so. That sounds like a great opportunity for modders, folks that are focused on technology modernization initiatives to focus their time and attention is in some of these less modernized and maybe under-resourced areas. But when it comes to resources, how competitive are our 911 centers with each other? Do you find that there's competing resources, or are they all pretty equally resourced?
Oh, with over 5,000 different facilities across the nation, there are haves and there are have-nots.
Sure.
And there are people who are very competitive and people who don't know enough to be competitive. I have always been of the ilk to go out and get certifications that were not necessarily required, but gave you benefit during negotiations or reduced your legal liability, etc. And so I've been involved in some friendly competitions with some of my other directors and executive directors that way. I won't say it's not, but I think the focus still, by and large, and rightly, involves providing service, works around providing
Sure.
service. Hey, what can I do that's best for the people that I serve? Now, I will also say that internally there's competition with other city or state or local departments when it comes to funding. Even though I managed a multi jurisdictional center, my funding came from the municipalities involved. And come budget time, I knew I was fighting with every fire chief who wanted a new fire truck, for every police department that wanted another cop, and for every park department that wanted another set of swings. It was the reality of life. We're friends 10 months of the year, but boy, those 2 months of budget time, watch out. There is that. And even though I can sit here and make the case for what is more important to your access to emergency services, you know, my friends at the utility department that collected people's garbage on a weekly basis can say, oh, yeah, that's all good. But what happens if we don't collect garbage for a couple of weeks? Then there's a health crisis. Yeah, there's competition for the tax dollar no matter what. And that's why, as I said, moving forward, you do see an increase in 911 centers consolidating with each other to try to cut back at least on some of that overhead and technology costs.
Interesting, interesting. So looking into the future, what challenges do you see these consolidated 911 centers facing, and how do you navigate those?
If you have a consolidated 911 center, it is like a family or a classroom that has a lot of kids. All the players that you're trying to take care of, who are your paying customers, if you make a decision that somebody thinks benefits another agency and not them, or benefits another agency a little more than it does to them, there's that. So there are political negotiations that are never ending. And I say it, I certainly keep my finger on our industry news. I see 911 centers who have been operating in consolidated modes for a decade or more, and suddenly one or more of their agencies gets the idea that they'd be better on their own or they're paying too much. And so you see some of this evolution devolve. And that's a big part of it. I still think that consolidated centers are by and large the most technically staffing and dollar sign efficiencies that you can get. Of course, again, if you are the sheriff in Podunk County, and I've got them 5 little gals sitting there at my desk, one at a time around the clock. Yeah, we're gonna keep that. So yeah, you've got that, and I don't know what makes that go away. I don't think I'll see it go away in my lifetime. It's part of human nature. The technical issues and the affordability and staying on top of technology and writing standards that take into effect the current day technology. The standards that were in place in 1968 when 911 was born are not the standards that are needed now in 2025, while 911 has gone into middle age and starting to get a little gray in the teeth, gray in the hair, long in the tooth, whatever the symbol is that I am not finding. But we've grown, we've matured. But yet, as we do, we have the problems of old age. Hey, how do we keep this up? Wait a minute, this is not your kid's 911. This is not your grandfather's 911 anymore. What is it now? How do we stay relevant? What technology is coming around the bend that we don't have a clue on? What is it that people want? What misinformation and disinformation do people have about 911? And boy, that is a nonstop issue. Wait a minute, no, that's not the way it works. And yeah, you've got all of that as you would with any maturing service.
Now, you said a word that comes dear to my heart, and that's standards. I've given speeches and I've had conversations about the need for standards in a variety of industry verticals and a variety of markets. Now, I didn't even think about it, but you brought up a very good point there. And I'll just ask the question flat out. Are there standards that are utilized across most or all 911 centers that are sort of the baseline for building upon?
It is 50 separate sets of regulations interpreted in more than 5,700 different ways. Thank you very much.
It's always the
But
interpretation,
yeah, I mean,
right?
yeah, they are, and some are probably more binding than
Sure.
others. From a manufacturer standpoint, like any other business, you are only going to get a certain amount of equipment for a certain life cycle. And after which, that life cycle, whether you say, oh, we're using it here, It don't matter. Good old Fred's radio company ain't making it anymore, so it don't matter whether you like it or not. So you've got that part, in that you're dealing with businesses that have their own life cycles, and then you are dealing with the Federal Communications Commission, which, again, federal government agency that oversees and promulgates regulations for radio and telephone. So you've got that, and it depends on what the mindset of the group in the FCC at that time is. What are the big issues? Sometimes you'll say, boy, 911 is just one after one coming down the road in terms of something we got to look at. And other times the water stays still for 2-3 years. You don't see anything. I mean, so that's part of it. Generational gaps. What do people want out of their job?
Sure.
What do they want? When I started, we rotated in the exact wrong direction. Just crazy. And even one of my weekends was a short weekend because I had to go to work at midnight on Sunday night for Monday morning. You've got people now who are going to be like, yeah, thanks, but I don't care what you pay me. I'm not doing that. You've got difference in standard. You've also got a reliance on technology and or government to solve what you perceive as somebody else's problem, certainly not yours.
Sure.
And that has gradually increased over the years when people, and you're like, I'm sorry, but that's not, what do you mean you're not going to? It has nothing to do with us. It's not a service the government provides. It's part of your personal property. We have no management responsibility over the fact that your faucet's leaking. And we get it. We get those kinds of calls. Trust me. It's the whole human experience and relationship between people and the government, and people and jobs. Hey, if these jobs here don't mesh up with what we want, we don't want them. I mean, when I was younger, you took a job just to have a job. And
Sure.
I got involved in 911, the bottom line, because a civil service test for the New York City Fire Department was thrown out. And that's where I was headed. I wanted to go there. And by the time it came back around again, I had married and was settled in this job, and I could very well have been assigned to a firehouse on the far end of New York City, which would have been like a 2-hour commute every day, which I didn't want. But things change, and the relationship between government and society changes along with it.
Absolutely. And it brings to bear some of the challenges that I'm sure that many companies and government has been having is in maintaining and retaining talent and trying to fight for that talent with companies that are a little bit more new age, that are a little bit more leading in terms of providing the benefits or the work environment that some of those employees might like to have. How often do you find that you're battling for employees or candidates with the local tech companies that are doing app development and modernization?
In this region here, constantly.
Yeah.
It is a constant battle. You have the research triangle here in the 3-county area. All your high-tech employees, break rooms with popcorn machines and fresh orange juice and marching bands. The whole bit, government's not going to go for that. I'm sorry. But yeah, so you've got that. So there are areas where you're not competing against government jobs. You're competing against a corporate job with mega companies who have got the resources to, we've got a nice break room here, and we've got a water park and a movie theater, and I'm not lying. And it's hard to compete with that. So yeah, that's part of it.
And I imagine that's got to be a significant challenge. I think in the federal government, a constant conversation is how can we possibly hire the best tech and talent away from those companies that are paying them more than we can afford to pay them, or giving them benefits that we just can't necessarily afford to give. So I'd love to wrap this conversation up with what do you think that 911 centers can do to improve their chances of getting good candidates? And what do you think that they can do to be better and more attractive employers?
First of all, And there have been many failed attempts at this. They need to move their pension/retirement system into the same framework as uniformed services.
Sure.
Most of them now have retirement systems that mirror typical office workers.
Okay.
And I'm not speaking down to office workers here, but if you're 60 years old, do you want to be sitting in a dark room at 3:12 a.m. on Saturday night? The answer is no. Hell no, you don't. So
Right.
what we've really got to do is come up with a years of service/age type of retirement system that's in use in much of the public safety realm outside of 911. Secondarily, there needs to be a raise in base pay. And I'm sorry, I have a personal bias, and I don't know that I think there's too many more jobs that are more important than that. But even ones that aren't are paying more.
Sure.
And if you take a look at your help wanted ads, and you can say, well, I'm going to go and sit at my doctor's reception desk and make what I am making or more than I would make at 911. And I'm doing it on 4 days a week because the doc is out playing golf every Thursday. I'm sorry. So we're not here. The answer is why wouldn't you take that other job? That's part of it. And third is there's got to be more public awareness and more public recruiting. To a degree, we always relied on, hey, you got a friend or a relative? We talk to our good employees. Hey, you got somebody you can play cards with or go see your church? Have come in, put in an application. Because the other thing, it puts that person on the spot where they're not
Sure.
going to give you a real crappy candidate because they know you're going to go back to them and say, what the hell did you give me that person for?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's that. But now the need has gotten just so astronomical in the numbers. You've got to go out, civic groups, church groups, people are doing county fairs, radio shows, podcasts, anything. You have got to reach out there and use the recruiting tools that work in 2025, not what worked in 1980.
Absolutely. And that brings to mind some of the commercials that I've seen recently for nuclear engineers for the Navy and for soldiers and for soldier readiness and for airmen. And if the Department of Defense can bring out their marketing repertoire and put that out to the public to try to hire good talent, that's absolutely what 911 should be considering and pursuing as well. So I think that's absolutely a fantastic recommendation, Barry. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
This has been an amazing conversation. I had never known nearly as much as I do now about the 911 system in our country. And I thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
Oh, you are most welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you to find out more about your local 911 or even about the 911 services that they may be offering in their region, how can they get a hold of you?
Very simple, barryfurey.com, and that's BARYFUREY.com. And there is a contact form on that website where they can fill out whatever question or concern they have, and I will get back to them as quick as I can.
Fantastic. So all those folks that are considering taking another job or that have recently been laid off, and those folks that are really looking for other opportunities, or folks that are looking to help out in their local community, absolutely reach out to Barry and get in touch with him. And you're on LinkedIn as well, I'm assuming?
Yes, I am.
All right. So we'll get that in the show notes as well. And we'll make sure people can get a hold of you. Thanks, Barry. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Chelsea.
We appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everyone. This has been a great episode of GovCon Unscripted. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Meggett. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.